You belong to a certain political party, just listen to that language. I belong to. You belong to? Really? Like you've given yourself over to a party as if that party actually has all of the truth and therefore I give myself over to them? You know what? One of the great tragedies that has happened in our country is that politics is no longer about ideas. It's about sides. And what side do you belong to? Personally, I am registered under a certain party, but I don't belong to that party at all. In fact, there are elements of that party I disagree with, although most of their policies I do agree with. That is the way politics is meant to be. It should be about, and people should be about ideas, not just give ourselves over to something. That is one of the great tragedies of what happens to us. And this is one of the greatest handicaps that we have as human beings. As human beings, we have this tendency of being partisan, of finding a place where we have like-minded people, where we feel safe, where we can continue to defend how we're so brilliant and they're so foolish, and just dig our heels in and live in that safe place. It's not an honest place. It's not a place that will help the world progress to a better place because it's dishonest. It simply is not following the truth. That's the tragedy of it. One of the core missions that the Rebbe pushed and pushed and pushed his Hasidim, his followers, to embrace is the mitzvah of Avas Yisrael, loving your fellow Jew as yourself. This is perhaps one of the most challenging mitzvahs in the Torah, one of the most challenging commandments. In fact, there are some commentators that actually say it's not even possible to love another as yourself. Well, we learn in our Hasidic philosophy how that is possible once we understand the very essence of who we are. But the simpler point I just want to get to is that the reason why the Rebbe pushed this over and over and over and over again is because it rubs very much against the nature of our humanity. And it calls upon our divinity, our divine self, to rise above our self-oriented self, to be partisan, and rise higher than that, to be dedicated to a much greater cause than that which serves me and makes me feel safe. Very hard thing to do, and therefore it's something we need to work on constantly. And when we do, we can actually progress as individuals and help the world actually progress. And in this week's Torah portion, we find a fascinating expression of this. It's the story of Benos Tzalafchad, the daughters of Tzalafchad. Tzalafchad was a gentleman who had passed away in the desert, and he had 5 daughters. The unfortunate situation they found themselves in was that as the Jewish people were at the threshold of the land of Israel and about to go in and conquer it, they were taught about the laws of inheritance and how the land of Israel was going to be divided based on tribes and then based on families. And essentially the way it worked was that the sons of every father would get the portion of land that belonged to their father. The issue the daughters of Tzalafchad had was their father had no sons. And so they said, what portion of land is our father going to get if he has no sons to actually take that land? So they came to Moshe, and they wanted to ask Moshe, Moses, the leader of the Jewish people, how to resolve this issue. And they argued that they should, in a case where there are no sons, the daughters, should get the land that belongs to their father. And in their arguing their case, they stated that, by the way, our father died, but he did not die as one of the members of the rebellion of Korach and his assembly of rebels who rebelled against the leadership of Moshe. So they said there's no reason for it. They said that maybe to indicate that there's no reason to penalize our father in any way. He didn't do anything wrong. He died of his own matters, but nothing to do with that. And they came to Moshe, and they brought their case to Moshe. And you know what the Torah says right after they brought the case to Moshe? Vayakrev Moshe es mishpatan lefnei Hashem, that Moshe brought their judgment before God. That's what the Torah says. So the commentators all speak about, what happened to Moshe. Why did Moshe bring this before God? Right? Why didn't he actually deal with the case? Right? And they say that all different types of explanations, which I'm not going to discuss right now. But I want to share one explanation with you, which is not the classic explanation, which actually offers great insight. You see, we find that Moshe doesn't even deliberate. Moshe doesn't discuss it with some of the other great leaders of the Jewish people at that time. Many commentators say that he forgot. That's the classic interpretation, is he forgot the law. But if he forgot the law, why didn't he ask someone who he taught the laws to? Why did I teach you? He goes straight to God. So one explanation is that actually he did not forget the law. Moshe recused himself from the case. Why did Moshe recuse himself from the case? Very simply. The moment the daughters of Tzalafchad said, our father did not die as a part of the rebellion against you, the satisfaction that gave to Moshe made him biased in judging this case. In other words, Moshe, although he was the greatest leader the Jewish people ever had, he was a prophet of God, there wasn't a man with greater integrity, who was vouched for by God himself in the Torah, where God speaks with unbelievably high accolades of Moshe. But Moshe still, the moment he heard a word of praise, knew that he no longer has objectivity in this case. And he said, I cannot judge this case. And therefore, the moment they finished their case and he heard those words, he went straight to God. He said, I cannot judge this. I don't have objectivity in this anymore. That's the clarity that Moshe actually had, which is just unbelievable. And the Talmud tells us a fascinating story with the Rabbi Yishmael ben Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yishmael, the son of Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yishmael, he leased out a farm of his, to a gentleman. And that gentleman, the deal was that the gentleman would give him a basket of fruit every week as payment for the lease. And so every week on Friday, that man would come with a basket of fruit. On Friday, he would give it to Rabbi Yishmael. Well, one week, he showed up to Rabbi Yishmael a day early, on Thursday. And he gave him the basket. And Rabbi Yishmael said, why are you here a day early? You always come on Friday. Why are you suddenly coming on Thursday? And he said, I'll tell you why. I have a court case. I had to come into town anyway to go before the court. So I figured I'd bring it to you, to bring you once I'm in. And Rabbi Shmuel was one of the judges in the town, in the city. And he said, firstly, I'm not taking the basket from you today. I want you to give it to me tomorrow, as you always do. And secondly, I can no longer be a judge on for your case because you brought the basket one day earlier to me. And he recused himself because that subtle benefit that this man was now offering him of getting his fruit a day earlier would take away his ability to have full objectivity. In fact, Rabbi Shmuel sat by the case to listen to the case. And as he was listening to the case and the arguments being made, he was listening to the leasee, the one who leased the field from him, make his arguments. And he was thinking, his mind was running at high pace as to, he could make a better argument. And he noticed after the case was over how his mind was constantly working in favor of this gentleman, even though he refused to take the basket. But by the mere fact that the man brought it one day earlier, even though he didn't even take it, already made him biased and took away his objectivity. Because we as humans have an inherent handicap where we are naturally biased unless we make a heroic effort not to be. And the moment someone makes any slight overture to us, we already are no longer objective, we are partisan. We are no longer objective, we are biased. We have to be very much aware of this bias. Just being aware of how entrenched we are in this bias, so that even when we are convinced that I have no bias, that I have absolute objectivity, to know in the back of our mind that maybe we are still being partisan, maybe we are still being subjective. That is how serious this issue is. And therefore, we can do something really beautiful when someone shares an idea with you, which is not the way you think. And in fact, you believe that idea is absolutely wrong. What do you classically do? they share an idea that's wrong, right? Well, you tell them how wrong it is, right? You make a statement. I want to suggest that the next time someone tells you an idea that is wrong, don't make a statement. Ask them a question. Ask them why they feel that way. What about this? What about that? Ask them a series of questions to learn about understanding why someone would think that way if it's so wrong. And you know what's going to happen? One of two things will happen. Either one, through your questions, that person will actually realize that you're right and they're wrong. The fact that you're not attacking them and telling them that they're wrong, you're just asking questions, will give them the space and the dignity to actually possibly be able to admit that they are wrong. Or it may just be possible, even though you may not think so, that through a questioning, you're going to learn more about their perspective and actually realize that you are wrong. Okay, maybe not that you are even wrong, but maybe that they have a point. Maybe you still disagree, but they have a point, and you will be enlightened, and you'll become a more objective and honest person. And there's nothing more beautiful than that, because the more we get rid of our ego, our subjectivity, our partisanship, the more we get rid of all of that, the more beautiful the world becomes, because the world becomes more beautiful when we become more beautiful.